So let's start with an easy question. Why did we lose the 2012 election? Now, put aside all of the kind of strategic implications of why we lost the 2012 election. Yes, we didn't do a good job on grassroots. We blew all of our money on ads that people TiVoed through in Ohio and Virginia and North Carolina and Florida. Yes, we did a poor job picking a candidate who was a pro-Obamacare candidate when the biggest issue on the table was Obamacare, and also happened to be, I mean, for all practical purposes, the first non-Christian, traditionally Christian candidate in American history in a time when Christianity, traditional Christianity, is really under assault from the left. Forget all of that. Instead, just imagine that you are a normal voter, which is to say that you're dramatically ignorant and you think that Kim Kardashian is significantly more important than the presidency of the United States. Now, Mitt Romney and Barack Obama are running against each other, and all you know about these guys is what they say about each other. And this is the truth. Both candidates actually succeeded in defining their opposition. They actually did. Here's how Mitt Romney defined Barack Obama. Barack Obama, very nice guy, good family man, somebody who really embodies what the Declaration of Independence was going for, who believes in the Constitution, although kind of interprets it wrongly, just not very good at being president. Good guy, bad president. Right? That was kind of the Mitt Romney picture of Barack Obama. And the polls showed that. If you look at the exit polls, people didn't think that Barack Obama was a very good president, and they agreed with Mitt Romney more on policy than they did with Barack Obama. Now, here's how Barack Obama defined Mitt Romney. This guy is the worst guy since Mussolini. This guy hates women. In fact, he has binders full of them just to prove how much he hates them. Not to hire them, but just because he hates women. This is a guy who straps dogs to the top of cars. This is somebody who wants to put you all back in chains. Right? This is somebody who, first and foremost, wants to fire people, and if he can really swing it, he would like to fire you just a couple years before your wife contracts cancer and dies so that you lose your health insurance and he can take credit for her death. That is the Mitt Romney that Barack Obama painted, and the exit polls showed that too. Over 80% of the American population thought that Barack Obama cared more about people like them than Mitt Romney did. Now, nothing in his policy would suggest that this president gives a damn about any American. Really, his policies are bound to fail, they are designed to fail, and he knows they will fail. In fact, he wants them to fail, because when his policies fail, then his policies have succeeded. The more people you have that are unemployed, the more Democrats you have. The more people you have crossing the border illegally, the more Democrats you have. The more people you have who are not in traditional family structures, the more Democrats you have. All of his policies are designed to achieve more Democrats. That's what he's in the business of doing. And bullying is the essential part of what he does. It is the central part of what he does. He has to bully us on a moral level. And here's the thing, it's bled down into everything that liberalism is all about. It's the reason that, look, I'm Jewish. That means that my immediate family is Republican. Everybody else in our family is liberal, not surprisingly. And this has been our experience. I'm sure everybody here is basically from the Los Angeles area, so I'm sure this is your experience too. Thanksgiving dinners are awkward. At Thanksgiving dinner, you're trying to talk about the weather, and suddenly somebody brings up gay marriage, and as it turns out, you hate homosexuals. Like, you personally hate homosexuals. Right? And dinner starts to get kind of nasty, and you say, well, no, I really don't. You know, I'm just anti-gay marriage. And they say, no. You hate gay people. Right? And then when you start defending yourself on that, then they immediately go to, well, you must hate black people because you're Republican. And pretty soon, you kind of retreat to the den, and you watch the Detroit Lions get beat again. Now, the left uses this kind of bullying not just on the individual level, but they've taken over vast institutions. I mean, this is what David really focuses on virtually all the time. When you look at the university is a massive institution that has been taken over on behalf of bullying for the left. There is no rhyme, reason, or evidence to back any of the leftist positions presented on campus. They are still teaching debunked Marxism as the main philosophy. But there's emotion that's taught. And what's taught most of all is that all of us in this room are horrible, racist, bigots, sexist, homophobes. We are all horrible people. They take over Hollywood, and this is vastly important. We underestimate the impact of Hollywood because we think, because whenever you speak to conservatives, conservatives are like dolphins when it comes to entertainment. You know how dolphins sleep with half their brain on and half their brain off? So conservatives have a political side of their brain and they have an entertainment side of their brain. When they're in political mode and you ask them, you know, what kind of TV shows do you watch? They say, I like Ronald Reagan biopics, right? They say, what I would really prefer to watch more than anything else on earth is a documentary about World War II. That's what I'm into. And then they go home and they turn on the entertainment side of their brain and they watch Big Bang Theory. Really, the polls show that the #1 show watched among conservatives, self-identified conservatives, is The Big Bang Theory, which also happens to be the #1 show overall right now. We watch the same thing that everybody else does. So Hollywood knows that. So what does Hollywood do? They put all of their morality into building characters that you like, simply so that then later they can turn to you and say, you're a really nasty person because you disagree with what that character does. Right? If you like Rachel from Friends, but you disagree with single motherhood, right? Unwed motherhood, you're a bad person because Rachel from Friends was a single mother, right? This is Joe Biden, who's a vastly stupid man, once said something that was actually mildly intelligent. He said that Will and Grace and Ellen had done more for the gay agenda than any other piece of entertainment had ever done for any agenda. That is 100% true. He said this country has become a pro-gay marriage country in large part because of Will and Grace and Ellen. And what that is subtle bullying on the part of the left by presenting characters who are really likable and then posing them against people who are really unlikable. Right? In Hollywood's vision, everybody in this room is John Lithgow from Footloose. Right? We all want to shut down the dancing. That's what we're about. They take over the nonprofits. I mean, if you look at Media Matters has been used by this administration as essentially a club on behalf of its policies, trying to initiate boycotts, AstroTurf boycotts against folks like Glenn Beck, against folks like Rush Limbaugh. All of those groups have been working in coordination with the White House in the greatest attempt to quash the First Amendment, certainly in my lifetime. It's incredible to watch. And most of all, they've taken over the media. And the media is the home of institutional bullying. You want to know why everybody in this room cares about Benghazi, but nobody outside of this room does? It's because of the mainstream media, which pretends that they're objective and hide behind that facade of objectivity in order to portray us as a bunch of rambunctious punks who just don't like the black president. And that's why we care about Benghazi. Meanwhile, President Obama can do anything he likes, including go off to Vegas, while 4 Americans are dying in Benghazi, and he's still a nice fella. Now, those are the institutions that the left has taken over. They also use their bullying on a variety of topics. We mentioned some of them. When it comes to the gay marriage issue, the bullying tactic is that we must be against gay people, we hate gay people if we are pro-traditional marriage. On race, it's very obvious that they do this. The idea is that we hate black people if we are, for example, in favor of voter ID. Now, what voter ID has to do with being black is beyond me. It seems a little bit racist to me to suggest that black people are too stupid to be able to go down to the DMV and pick up an ID. But they say that we hate black people and are trying to disenfranchise them if we want voter ID. On class, we saw with sequestration, the same sort of deal. We didn't want to cut government spending because the country is bankrupt. We don't want to cut taxes because we would like greater prosperity. We do all of it because we hate poor people. And, I'm sure that, there are times we do. But in reality, we don't actually hate poor people. We want to help poor people, obviously, because we would like to help everyone. And the greatest way to help them is through free markets. But that's not how the left portrays us. So here's what we need to start doing. How do we fight this? How do we fight this? Now, as a framework for this part, I always like to use the debate that I did with Piers. How many people saw the debate that I did with Piers on gun control? You don't have to have seen this debate that I did with Piers Morgan on gun control in order to understand this. I walked through it. It was about a 14-minute debate, at the end of which Piers Morgan was very unhappy. And it was about... Piers had been doing this routine on gun control. He was the chief left bully on gun control. Right? What he was doing was he was essentially saying that anybody who disagreed with him on gun control disagreed with him because they didn't care enough about the dead kids in Sandy Hook. It was because we are morally deficient human beings that we didn't agree with him on gun control. And he would do that all the time, right? He would say, oh, I'm so frustrated, you don't seem to understand that there are dead children in Sandy Hook. Right? Go with the moral outrage. And we were the bad guys and he was the good guys. This is how, by the way, this is how leftists sleep at night. Leftists can't sleep at night looking at their policies and saying, oh, what great success we've brought to America. They can sleep at night by knowing they're better than you. They're a bunch of elitists. So this is how Piers Morgan sleeps at night. Sure, he has armed guards protecting his house, which is another reason that he can sleep at night. But the real reason he can sleep at night is because we're bad people and he's a good guy. So what I only had a couple things planned when I walked into this debate with Piers. There are 10 rules, basically, when you're debating somebody from the left. Before I get to the 10 rules on debating somebody from the left, there's only 2 reasons, really, ever, well, 3 reasons, why you would ever talk to someone from the left in the first place. The first reason to talk with someone from the left is if they're serving your food or providing a service. The second reason to talk with someone from the left is if they really don't know that they're of the left, and you found the one rare liberal, right? He's like the white elephant, who's actually somewhat reasonable and open to argumentation. Then you can have those discussions. And the third reason is if you have an audience to humiliate the leftists publicly. That is really the only reason, those are the only reasons to talk with folks on the left. So, with that in mind, here are the 10 rules for debating folks on the left. And this is stuff that Republicans are going to need to do if they ever hope to win again, because our messaging is only slightly worse than the candidates that we've been running the last few years. The first thing we have to do is we have to take a page from their playbook, which is we have to frame our opposition. Barack Obama is not a nice guy. Barack Obama is not someone who cares about the Constitution. He's not someone who believes in the Declaration of Independence. He despises both of those documents. They stand against everything that he stands for. And when he cites the Constitution and the Declaration in an attempt to hijack the words of the founders to promote Marxism, he is doing so purposefully in order to undermine the words of the founders. That's what he's doing. So with regard to Piers, the first thing that I did was within 5 seconds of opening, I said to him, Piers, you're a bully who stands on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook to promote your gun control agenda. And he kind of clutched at his pearls and said, how dare you? And I said, well, how dare you is not an argument. And he said, well, I repeat, how dare you? And I said, well, I sort of repeat. That's not really an argument. And also, I've been watching your show repeatedly, and you do this a lot, which is the second rule, which is don't get intimidated. When you talk with folks on the left, their moral righteous indignation comes out very quickly because they run out of arguments very quickly. Their righteous indignation is in it's in inverse proportionality to their ability to argue. The worse they are at arguing, the more righteous indignation you'll get from them faster. So you can't get intimidated. Andrew Breitbart, who was a mentor of mine, I knew Andrew since I was 17 years old, and he and I were friends for a very long time. He always used to say, walk toward the fire, because they're going to be firing on you anyway. Republicans, conservatives, we've been under the misimpression that they're going to leave us alone. They are not going to leave us alone. They have made this clear. And so we can either embrace the fight or we can run from the fight. If we embrace the fight, then maybe we'll have a chance of winning. If we run, then we're going to surrender and we're going to lose. And that's what's largely happened in the state of California. The third point here, you have to frame the debate. Now, I had something in my pocket for Piers, a little present for Piers, and a minute and a half in, I pulled out a copy of the Constitution and handed it to him live on air. And I asked him to familiarize himself with the Second Amendment. The reason for doing that is because Americans may not know what's in the Constitution. They may not know anything about the Constitution, but they like it. And so it's very important to frame the debate in terms that allow us to win. If we are arguing gun control without reference to the rationale for the Second Amendment and without reference to the Second Amendment itself, then we lose. If we are arguing race relations without bringing up the fact that the Democratic Party has impoverished generations of black folks in the inner city and will continue to impoverish them purposefully, not by accident, purposefully to keep their union buddies incompetent and rich, then we are failing in our fundamental duty to frame the debate. They need to be made to answer for their own positions. Which brings us to the fourth point. We have to set up philosophical inconsistencies with their positions. You see Republicans fail to do this all the time. We take it as though they actually stand for what they say they stand for. They do not stand for what they say they stand for. They are giant liars. When it came to gun control, the big lie is that they only want an assault weapons ban. Now that makes no sense. No sense at all. There are about 114 million so-called assault weapons in the country. Those are used for approximately 358 murders in 2011. There are approximately 110 million handguns in the country. Those were used in approximately 6,000 murders. So which are more dangerous, handguns or quote-unquote assault weapons? Right? Clearly handguns, if you're going to blame it on the weapon, handguns are more dangerous. So this is what I said to Piers. I said, if your position is assault weapons ban, tell me, please, why you don't want a total gun ban. And he couldn't answer. Because of course he wants a total gun ban. And once you get to the root of leftist positions, that's when they become unpopular. The root of leftist positions is wildly unpopular with the American public. This is why, on immigration, for example, what Obama says he's for is not actually what he's for. If we exposed what he was actually for, the American public would want to vomit on him. Everybody sort of agrees what has to happen on immigration, right? We sort of all agree. Close the border and then figure out what to do with the people here. It's a very easy two-step process. Obama says, I agree with that, and then he says, oh yeah, about that first part, not so much. And that whole border security thing, He puts a poison pill, and the purpose of it, this is why Republicans are real dumb if they fall into this immigration mistake. his whole purpose is to set up a very, very popular policy and then poison pill in the bill so Republicans have to obstruct it, and then he can turn around and say, look at these obstructionist Republicans who hate Hispanics. That is his whole goal. We have to expose the philosophical inconsistencies in what they're doing. Fifth rule here is don't get sidetracked when you're talking with folks on the left. You may notice that when you talk with people on the left, it's sort of like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. Right? You're talking about tax policy, and suddenly you find yourself talking about gay marriage, and you have no idea how you got from one place to the other because they are wildly shifting. They're sticking and they're moving like Sugar Ray Leonard. I mean, it's unbelievable. What happened in the debate with Piers on this is about halfway through the debate, there was a commercial break, and Piers would not look at me. I mean, he was really unhappy. And he was talking to his producer in his ear, and suddenly I see one of his producers scurry out with a bunch of Sudafed boxes. Right? And I'm from California. I thought we were going to cook crystal meth. And in fact, this was going to be less fun than that. He pulled out the Sudafed, and he said, you know, I can walk down to the Rite Aid on the corner, and I can't buy 6 boxes of Sudafed. But if I walked to Walmart, I could buy 1,000 rounds of ammunition. Don't you find that inconsistent? And I said, I don't understand what one has to do with the other. If you want to talk drug policy, have me on to talk drug policy. If you want to talk gun policy, let's talk gun policy. I have no clue what you're talking about. And he kind of looked at me, and then he moved on. And he had to push the Sudafed aside. Later I tweeted, don't bring Sudafed to a Constitution fight. Sixth rule here is if you don't know something, admit it. You see Republicans get in trouble with this a lot. Usually, you know, folks like Paul Krugman, who is easily the stupidest Nobel Prize winner in human history, or folks on other folks on the left, they have one fact that they think is mildly relevant to the conversation, and they bring it up as though this is their trump card. They always have the trump card. If you don't know about it, don't say you know about it, because usually it's irrelevant. So what happened here is that Piers said to me on gun control, he says, do you know what Ronald Reagan's position was on gun control? And I said, no, I was 4 when he left office. And Piers said, well, I said, why don't you tell me? Because it was clear he was going to tell me anyway. And sure enough, here it comes, the letter. He slaps a letter down. It was signed by Ronald Reagan. And it talks about Ronald Reagan's position on assault weapons. Now, later when I actually had a chance to do the research, the kind of assault weapons that Ronald Reagan was talking about are not the kind that Piers Morgan is talking about. Ronald Reagan was in favor of getting rid of fully automatic machine guns. Piers Morgan is in favor of getting rid of like a .22 rifle. But no matter. He says, you know, here is Ronald Reagan's position on assault weapons, and he reads me the whole letter. And finally, he finishes up, and he says, well, now what do you think about assault weapons? You know, Ronald Reagan, your favorite president, opposed assault weapons. And I said, so? And he paused for a second, and he said, but you like Ronald Reagan? I said, yeah, he's not God. I mean, he did a lot of things I loved. He also did a lot of things I didn't love. I mean, the amnesty was a bad thing. Right? Spending too much money was a bad thing. Right? When he was governor of California, paving the way for tremendous liberalization of abortion, that was a bad thing. He admitted that was a bad thing later in his career. This is the 7th point here, which is don't get sucked in by the paradigm. We saw this during the Bush years a lot. Just because somebody is on your side doesn't mean you have to defend every stupid thing they do. And Mitt Romney did a lot of dumb things during the campaign. 47% was one of them. And they're still trying to hang that one around our neck. And you see this with regard to George W. Bush, who I love as a human being, but his second term was a disaster area. George W. Bush's second term, if there is no second term for George W. Bush, there is no Barack Obama. It is that simple. His second term was a disaster. And yet Republicans are lumped in with George W. Bush because they didn't protest loudly enough when he was spending oodles and gobs of money. And they didn't protest loud enough when guys on our side were spending oodles and gobs of money. Just because someone's on your side doesn't mean you have to side with them. We are conservatives, not Republicans first and foremost. Okay, 8th point here. Let the other side have victories that mean nothing. When you're in a public debate, well, this is a fun parlor trick that you can do with your friends too. What you do is they're arguing a point and you want to look moderate, so you give them a victory on something that means absolutely nothing. So what happened in this debate with Piers is there was a point where he said to me, I said to him, Piers, here's the deal. We all sort of agree on what has to happen with guns. More good people should have guns, less bad people should have guns. Right? Pretty common sense. And Piers says, was Nancy Lanza, Adam Lanza's mom, was the Sandy Hook shooter, his mom, was Nancy Lanza a bad person or a good person? And it was, it was a good semantic point. because there are many definitions of good and bad, right? There's a very, I mean, the definition of bad varies widely between bad as in the Holocaust and bad as in I have a cold, right? So he was mixing up the two. And so what I said to him is, well, let me rephrase. What we want is for more good or responsible people to have guns, and less bad or irresponsible people to have guns. And for a second, he kind of grinned like he'd gotten me, and then he realized that he hadn't won anything, because I'd granted him the semantic point without him actually winning anything. And we can do this on some policies as well. There are certain policies where we can kind of grant the point because it's already been taken off the table, and it's a waste of time to argue it. And this is true with some of the social issues. And there are very few people who are arguing right now that, for example, we should reinstate sodomy laws, right? Nobody is arguing that we should reinstate sodomy laws, and that's fine. You know, that's in my opinion, a good thing politically. You can say, look, we're not for reinstating any of those laws. That is what it is. You're not giving anything up. That debate is over. It's done. So that makes you look like a moderate, even though you haven't moved 1 inch on your actual fundamental position with regard to marriage. The ninth point here is to ask questions and reverse the polarity. You may notice when you talk with leftists, they're like prosecutors. Right? You hate black people, don't you? Right? You hate gay people. I know you do. Right? The answer to this is that we have to make them defend their own positions. It's very difficult for the left to defend their own positions because they don't have positions. They have feelings. And so when they're asked to defend their positions, then it ends poorly for them. The final point here is body language. Body language is massively important in all of this. When you're publicly debating someone, Jeremy knows this better than I do because he's in Hollywood, but body language is maybe the most important thing. I'm still trying to work on my own. When you saw John McCain in 2008 debating, I mean, first of all, the optics of John McCain were just a disaster. I mean, leave aside the fact that the Republican National Convention actually had him backdropped by a lime green screen. John McCain, well, you had the Leni Riefenstahl Obama scene, right? Him descending from the clouds into the Greek columns. The body language of John McCain was horrendous, and it made a difference. He was portrayed as a crotchety old man. You know why? Because he's a crotchety old man. He was white-knuckling the microphone. Okay, if you can see your knuckles during a debate, you're doing it wrong. And Mitt Romney got it right during the first debate, and then he got it wrong basically during the last 2 debates. It makes a big difference. So during the debate with Piers was very much forward. He was very closed body language. He didn't look like a happy camper. I was having a good time. I mean, so I was perfectly happy. I was kind of back and open hands. You know, all that matters. The imagistics matter. So, in sum, when it comes to the left, there is only one way to fight these folks, because this is war. It is war. This is not a hobby. This is not something we do for fun. This is protecting our way of life. If they are going to punch us, if they are going to come after us, we have to punch back. If they are going to argue character, and we are going to argue policy, we will lose every single time. If correct policy were a winning formula, Democrats would not have won an election for the last 75 years. Correct policy is not going to do it. We have to define who they are. This is not about us. This is about them. It's about what they're trying to do, moving us away from the fundamental American principles that make us America. When Barack Obama said during his inaugural address that we are America and we will always be the greatest nation on the planet, that is an absolute lie, and it is an absolute lie because of people like Barack Obama. We are not genetically superior to anyone else. We are not intellectually superior to anyone else. We have a better set of principles, and that set of principles is what we are fighting for. And that doesn't make us bad people. That makes us good people. And the fact that these want to undermine that, the fact that these folks want to destroy that, makes them morally deficient. There is only one way to defeat a bully. In the words of Barack Obama, you punch them back twice as hard. Thanks so much. No, I think that's right. I mean, they are the active wing of the Democratic Party. There's a reason that every policy underlying it has help for the trial lawyers. I mean, there's a reason that Obamacare is specifically designed to help out the trial lawyers. When it comes to twisting law, there's nobody better at it than Democrats. This is why, you know, I really do believe that the Supreme Court has well overstepped its boundaries. I mean, if I could go back in time, I would say Marbury versus Madison is wrongly decided. The Supreme Court has done as much damage as any other institution in American life. You can see how the left is attempting to use law as a baton to wield against the American people. They will continue to do that, and again, there's only one way to do that, and that is to create alternative structures, alternative law schools, train people on the outside. Thank God there are places like Federalist Society that focus on this. When I was at Harvard, FedSoc was the largest student organization at Harvard. So there is an active resistance, although, you know, Fed Society stock is in low regard because of John Roberts right now. They still do good work.
of peace in the Middle
East? Oh, well, nothing will happen, because nothing is ever going to happen, and thank God at least Israel has a leader that's worth his salt. Bibi is doing a good job this time. Back in the 90s, Bibi had not yet learned his lesson from Y River, so now he's learned his lessons after Y River, and he understands you don't make concessions to terrorists even after tremendous American pressure is applied. The fact that he won his re-election is very good for him, because Obama put serious resources into having him lose that election. As far as what's going to happen, with the Jewish community in the United States and Democrats, I am extraordinarily pleased that Chuck Hagel is the new Secretary of Defense. I'm very, very pleased about this. The reason that I am pleased about this is because I want open anti-Semites in this administration. I don't want any Jew, I don't want one Jew to have the excuse that this administration is overtly pro-Israel when they are overtly anti-Semitic. Chuck Hagel is an anti-Semite. This administration is anti-Semitic. It always has been. It always will be. They despise the state of Israel, and they would not blink. If Obama could clap his hands tomorrow and the state of Israel disappeared from the map, he would do it in a heartbeat. And any Jew who continues to vote for this Democratic Party, dominated by folks like this, should turn in his Jew card right now. Well, I mean, David knows this much better than I do. I'm a lifelong conservative, and David was once a leftist, so David knows how the liberal mind works better than I do. But I would certainly say that when it comes to the left, they are short-term thinkers. They are self-centered and they are short-term thinkers. And it doesn't feel good to say that there is a giant deficit looming on the horizon. Also, you don't win elections by saying that doom is around the corner. You don't. If you say that doom is around the corner and your opponent says, no, everything's great, nothing bad is going to happen here, then you look like you are, you're an apocalyptic thinker, and you're the bad guy now. I've been saying to Republicans in Congress for a while that they need to get off the entitlement reform bandwagon in PR, because, look, we don't have the presidency and we don't have the Senate. It's not going anywhere. And you see what Obama's doing with it. Obama is grabbing entitlement reform. This week he's going to present his budget, and he's going to present entitlement reform as part of that budget, not because he actually wants serious entitlement reform. He knows his budget's not going anywhere, but simply so that he can look moderate while trying to raise Americans' taxes some more. That's the whole goal here. What Republicans should do, and what they should be really focused on right now with regard to fiscal policy and PR and messaging, is they should be picking out every example of bad spending in the federal government and passing an individual two-page bill to repeal that section of bad spending, send it to the Senate, force Harry Reid not to put it up for a vote, or force Harry Reid to pass it and Obama to veto it, and then run as fiscally conservative folks. And then when we actually have a majority, do something. See, this is what Obama does. Don't underestimate Barack Obama. Do not underestimate him. He's a brilliant tactician, or at least the people around him are brilliant tacticians. He is very good at what he does. He understands something on a basic level. He only wins politically when he does not pass anything. Okay, when the stimulus passed, it launched the Tea Party movement. When Obamacare passed, he got destroyed in 2010. For 2 years, nothing happened. And then he won a wide-ranging victory in 2012 because he got to cast us as the obstructionist. Obama does not go for half measures. He's not going to be Bill Clinton. He's not going to come to the middle. He's going to pretend to come to the middle until he wins a majority, and then he's going to win a majority in the House, and then he's going to leverage whatever the hell he wants into place. Republicans cannot compromise on this stuff. We are no longer living in William F. Buckley's world. Okay, when William F. Buckley says our job is to stand athwart the rails of history shouting stop, there's a train coming down those tracks. We've been shouting stop for generations now, and that train is still coming. There's only one way to derail the train, and that's to bomb the train tracks. As far as kind of who the current leaders of the Republican Party are, I like the block of Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, and Mike Lee. I think they are all potential leaders. Scott Walker, the governor of Wisconsin, is terrific. I don't like Chris Christie. I think that there are a good number of kind of younger conservatives. Now, the reason I like Ted Cruz is not because he's Hispanic. I think that the stupidest thing that we can do is run Hispanic candidates and then expect that Hispanics are going to immediately flip the switch. That's not how this works. Democrats do not win because Democrats run minority candidates. Democrats win because they give away goodies, and people like goodies. I mean, we like to talk about what a high percentage Barack Obama won of the black vote. I mean, look at the percentage that John Kerry won of the black vote. It's pretty similar. I mean, they were only separated by about 5 percentage points. So in terms of wooing minority communities, we're going to have to do something that we've never had to do before. And this is a testament to the fact that everybody in this room, we're no longer conservatives. You know why? There's not much to conserve. The status quo is not with us. If things keep going the way they're going, we are a bankrupt country. Right? The status quo is not with us. And so what we're going to have to realize, especially when we do outreach to the minority community, is it's basically, California is like Afghanistan. Okay, we need a counterinsurgency strategy. We need boots on the ground. We need folks actively changing people's lives in places where they have never experienced capitalism. If you go down to South LA and you take a kid from South LA and you drive them through Beverly Hills and you say, one day, if you work hard, the American dream is you can have this house, they'll look at you and they'll call you a liar and they'll be right. And the reason they will be right is because they are stuck in horrible schools with a family structure that is not built to support them, and everybody they know has been dependent on government for generations, and everybody that they know is not going to be living in that house on Beverly Hills unless they, strike it rich in some bizarre way. So what we have to do is we have to build a different lifestyle for folks. Instead of spending hundreds of millions of dollars on Mitt Romney's campaign ads, how about we spend hundreds of millions of dollars building schools in the inner cities that actually teach traditional American values, and we send these kids there for free, but not really for free. When they get out of school, then they work for the corporation that helped sponsor the education, right? Like an ROTC program. You get people dependent. I grew up in a traditional two-parent household. I grew up, my parents never took government money. And that's why I always believed in capitalism, because that's the lifestyle I led. You can't expect people to immediately jump both feet into a lifestyle they have never even considered before. This is why Democrats are so intent on destroying the inner cities. This is why they're intent on destroying minority communities. They are making people dependent on them. And that's not because these folks are bad. This is why the 47% comments were so stupid. Because it's not these folks are bad. They are no morally worse than any other human being. Okay? They're rich people who are living in New York taking government welfare. And to demonize those folks, it's not about them. It's about the system that they've been dragged kicking and screaming, or willingly, into being a part of. And it is our job to get them out of that system or provide them an option to get out of that system. And if we don't do that, then we are going to continue to lose. And that's a lot of hard work, and that's a lot of money, and it's not something we're used to. We're used to the default being, if you don't work hard, then you're poor. And if you want to work hard, then you get ahead. That's still true to a certain extent in California, just like it is in the rest of the United States. But if you have no experience with that personally, if you've never seen that happen to any of your friends, you're not going to believe that. What you will believe in is the welfare check at the end of that counter. Well, Texas needs border security on all of its borders. But I mean, it's a serious problem. As far as wooing the Hispanic vote, I said this at the California Republican Convention. I did the keynote up there a couple months ago. And I said, and I truly believe this, that our politicians need to start learning Spanish. And I don't mean that because I think that Spanish is better than English, or because English is not the language of the United States. It is. All of our founding documents are in English. But conservatism is not relegated to one language. You should be able to vote Republican without having to speak English. And if you don't understand what we're saying, then you're not going to vote for us. While we're busy railing against bilingual education, the left is busy running ads in Hispanic communities in Spanish talking about how evil we are. So we have a choice here. We can either get practical, or we can continue to fight yesterday's battles. Well, they're crazy.
Yes, but we need them.
I think Rand, by the way, is different than Ron. I'm holding out judgment on Rand. Yeah, as far as the Ron Paul folks, I think one of the ways that you're going to bring the Ron Paul folks into the fold is by having a truly conservative fiscal policy. And I think the Republican Party has been a long way from that for a very long time. They rightfully don't trust the Republican Party or the conservative movement to hold down the spending and to stay relatively libertarian on kind of economics. And that's not inaccurate. So, look, if Rand ends up being the candidate in 2016, obviously that'll help a lot with that. And we're just going to have to work real hard in the next 4 years to teach Rand about foreign policy.
Food.
Well, they started it. I mean, and when I say they started it, what I mean is that they've deliberately turned entertainment into a political medium. And we have to fight back on that same plane. So I tend to think Jimmy Fallon is a dramatically unfunny person. I ranked him somewhere between Pol Pot and Hitler on the funny scale. But he, there's something else that's wrong with Jimmy Fallon, which is that Jimmy Fallon is a leftist hack. Right? Jay Leno actually tries to provide a semblance of balance, and Jimmy Fallon does not. And NBC is moving away from that because this is what NBC does. NBC has deliberately tried to do that. I'm not a big fan of getting along. And what I mean by that is not that you can't have friends on the left. I do. I have friends on the left. We just don't talk politics. But they have made it unlivable. I mean, the left has made it really unlivable for conservatives in liberal areas. You don't see the same for liberals in conservative areas. Right? We don't demonize folks when they are in conservative areas. And they do demonize us when we're in places like Los Angeles or when I was spending time in Cambridge. This is what they do. And so if they're going to demonize us, this is actually a really important point. Civility is like the Geneva Conventions. The Geneva Conventions were designed to keep people in uniform. If you're out of uniform, then we can slap you in Gitmo and waterboard you. If you're in uniform, then you're a POW and you're treated under the Geneva Conventions. Civility is the same way. If people want to be civil, great, let's be civil. If people are going to be uncivil, then you don't deserve civility. In fact, it is counterproductive to treat an uncivil person with civility. If they call you a racist and you call them reasonable, you automatically lost the argument. Because if they call you racist, here's the logic. They call you racist, you say, oh, well, you're reasonable. What you're actually saying is that it is reasonable for them to call you racist, i.e. you're racist. Right? You just conceded their argument. It is dramatically unreasonable for them to do any of these things. Being contentious, we've been bullied into avoiding being contentious. The left has been utterly contentious for the last 40 years. I mean, they were bombing places in the 60s. The idea that we are the people who are, we're the fascists. I mean, you heard the language that Jeremy was quoting about me. When they said that I was a fascist version, that's apparently, I mean, I can guarantee that's only half true. But that's the language that they use about us on a regular basis. And we cannot fight back against that by trying to come to the table and have cultural conversations with them. I mean, that's the same folks who are on campus right now in the Jewish groups trying to have, iftar dinners with the folks who are then sending money off to the terrorist groups.